Here, everyone. I'm excited. We've got the trouble with tribbles. Or maybe it's software integration. You're watching Techstrong, gang. Hey, guys. Happy Friday. It's another week in 2025. It's before you know it, it'll be June. We're almost through January, but you know what? We've had an amazing Techstrong Gang month of January, not only because of our great gang members, but it's just been a crazy month with stuff going on here, right? How often do we invest $500 billion in Ether? But that was yesterday's show. If you missed it, catch it. Today, we've got the trouble with tribbles, as I mentioned. Well, that's Star Trek, but there might be trouble in software integration town. We're going to hear about that. We're going to hear about a couple of other things. But first, let me introduce you to our full house of Techstrong gang members today. Some of them sporting their gang color clothes and everything, and cups. First of all, I think we'll go west to east. We'll start out in the west. And if you're going to start in the west, you got to start at the top. The king of the valley there, John Swartz. John, I see you're back home. It's good to see you. How are you?
Yes, it's good to be home. Hey, yesterday, very interesting thing. I was just going to drop this in because I want to write about this eventually. I stopped by a stealth AI safety risk assessment startup. They're doing something that a lot of AI companies do. They're holed up in a house, so they're all living in the house together, putting together the company.
Sounds like a TV show.
It does. I met
Silicon
like
Valley.
3 or 4 of the members. Yeah.
I
Sounds
believe
like
the kids call that a hype house.
sounds like every startup I ever knew. So I don't know. But anyway.
Well, Benioff started Salesforce in an apartment, which was weird. But in any event, the reason why this company is interesting is that Eric Schmidt is, in a sense, one of their advisors, and one of the people who will be one of the executives there is helped write the Biden's executive order on AI guardrails that was just revoked by Trump. So it was pretty interesting. They sent pretty interesting things to tell me about where they think this is going and fodders.
Can we move along to the topics at hand?
It's good to be with everybody.
All right. Well, moving right along then, let's go to our next Silicon Valley resident there. If John's the Tsar, she's the, I don't know, the Duchess of Silicon Valley, Lisa Martin. Hey, Lisa, how are you?
Good morning, Alan. Great to see you guys. We have a lot of integration things to talk about today. I'm going to weave that theme through all blocks.
Absolutely. One of my favorite topics. Moving next, I guess Colorado is further west than Texas. So we'll stop high on the Rockies and say hello to Mitch Ashley. Mitchell, it's good to see you. How's everything?
Very good. I'm looking forward to a very integrated conversation.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. And then moving from Mitchell to Texas, it's our own Ann Ahola Ward. I think I almost got that right.
Nailed it.
Okay. Thank you, Ann. It's good to have you here. You changed your New Year's. Is that Valentine's Day up there?
It's Valentine's and birthday. Yeah, it was my birthday. So
it was your birthday. Oh, happy birthday.
Yes. Why have so many flowers?
Birthday. Happy birthday.
Happy
Ann.
birthday.
Thank you. It's why I have flowers.
All right.
And I figured, why not get all the hearts out?
And you wanted to, speaking of birthdays, it's our curmudgeon up in Harrison, Chief Content Officer Mike Bizard. Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Not going to say anything more. I want to jump right into things.
All right.
Our first topic today, I mentioned it was the trouble with software integration. We got a shootout at the OK Corral here? What's happening? What's the problem? John, you wrote about this, I think.
Yes. Futurum Intelligence did a report by Keith Kirkpatrick, and they in a sense, he kind of, when we talked to each other, it was almost in a sense like a 3D jigsaw puzzle being fit together between existing software and then integrating AI into it, all the while under pressure from the C-suite to do it as fast as possible. So we discussed this. The survey was conducted in the fall of 2024, and it kind of offers us a snapshot into the choices customers face over the price and functionality of Gen AI and other apps, while assuring management their prudent investments. And I think the reason why this is really interesting and very newsworthy is because there are so many choices these companies are going to have to make based on all these agentic AI offerings from every conceivable software company around. And it's going to be a lot of incredible pressure from Wall Street to show customers are making the right choices and integrating things in the right way, according to Keith. And some companies are considering consumption models as part of their strategy. And I kind of would turn this to Mitch because he's the expert in this area. It's probably not surprising, but I think there is a sense of urgency now that there hasn't been in quite a while.
Well, and by the way, shout out to Keith Kirkpatrick, who is the practice lead for enterprise applications, colleague of mine at Futurum. It's interesting because the survey was back in end of last year, mid last year, and the pace, we all know the pace of how things are changing with AI agents and AI bots and AI interfaces, and everybody's using kind of their own. People are sometimes buying it, or it comes with your Google or your Microsoft, or you upgrade your subscription to it. And kind of as a former CIO, the challenge in that situation is everybody has their favorite, so they always want you to integrate their thing. And so you also have to be able to demonstrate. So if we spend all this money on Slack or on AI for whatever platform that we use, what's the benefit? What's the ROI? And because they aren't cheap, you're talking about $10, $20 or more, $30 per user for these kind of capabilities. We are seeing that now. I mean, there's a lot of kind of people talking about Google agent space as kind of having the lead because they really naturally have integrated into all the Google Workspace suite, and everybody needs to catch up with them. I imagine in 2 months it'll be catch up with Microsoft or whoever. So it's like a 3D puzzle moving at 100 miles an hour. That's the problem we're trying to solve here.
Mitch, it seems to me at least that I think 75% of the people said that they have an issue with this, and I assume the other 25% were lying or just clueless. Integration's been a mess as long as I can remember. So how does this get any better ever?
It is. It's one of the biggest jobs of IT organizations is integrating all these tools. And that's why you see such a move to platforms, whether it's data platforms, development, DevOps, whatever kinds of platforms. And I think that's the real race that's going on here is Google, Microsoft, and OpenAI trying to lock you into their ecosystem, right? Get you so invested in their capabilities. OpenAI is supposed to come out with the operator to be able to access information on your computer. Is that the right way to go? Or should we just, we're a Microsoft shop, we'll keep on the Copilot Plus path. So as a CIO, you're looking at this and say, how much am I going to spend, not just on the tools, but people to integrate and support all this stuff, especially when it's changing quickly? I think they're going to pick their primary platform and probably ride that in most cases until things settle out a little bit more, which may make it harder for them to switch to anybody else down the road, frankly.
I think there's a subtle nuance here. And I didn't speak to Keith, you did, John, between software integration and communication. I think we've made tremendous strides using APIs and Zaps and stuff like that over the last 10 years, whatever, of one software being able to transfer data, kick off some sort of action, communicating and working together, right? I think we've cracked that nut to a large degree. Look, I mean, the success of APIs talks to that, where that's the majority of traffic on the internet are APIs talking to APIs. Now, if you're saying that's not integration, that's just communication, Okay, that's a nuanced kind of discussion. And then so the question then begs, what is true integration? Is it you live on my platform and you no longer exist as a standalone piece of software? Is that integration? Because what about API and communication and so forth, interoperability? Is that not enough to be true integration? Because if it is integration, I say BS. We got plenty of integration out there.
You have a good point because APIs give you access. They don't necessarily mean things are integrated. Think about how Copilot might be integrated into all the tools that you use in the UI. It's just part of it. It isn't sitting up there as a clippy thing that's going to bother you or another window or screen. So and APIs, Alan, are central to AI agents being able to
Sure.
talk to other traditional systems as well as between agents. So it's part of the fabric of it. But to your point, integration isn't just connecting the dots between different applications and systems. It gives access, but that may be all.
There's also a difference between an API and what people call a connector, right? Which is a more polished version of something that I can invoke that is not, just raw bits. Because I think just exposing an API doesn't do a whole lot for most people who are trying to integrate something.
And you have to build it, right?
Mm-hmm. And
I think if we
maintain
look
it.
at it from, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Good, Lisa.
I was going to say, I think if we look at it from a customer perspective, I look at it in marketing. I do a lot of work with Boomi integration platform as a service. I MC a lot of their events, and we look at it from a customer centric point of view. And customers just expect all of the data that companies have around them is going to not be siloed. It's going to be integrated. It's going to be accessible. You think about all of the different SaaS applications that vendors have and the number of apps that people have open at any one time. We expect these seamless business processes. We expect data to be available so that companies can truly be data companies to deliver value to the customer. And the customer doesn't care. They just want to make sure that what data a company has on them is just that, is integrated so that the business processes that concern that customer are delivered and the value is proved.
John, did in speaking to the analyst, was there this distinction between APIs and true integration?
There was one of the things that Keith pointed out in the survey that was interesting. Something I should have been mentioned earlier. It's just when we talk about the applications that have been deployed. I think was it 1/5 of the respondents said they deploy more than 11. And I think there was one other thing that more than half of those said their application technology stack blended applications developed in-house. It's just, Alan, I just like this kind of sense of frustration. And we see this undercurrent in a lot of the stories and segments we talk about, just the pressure down that permeates in the middle and then these decisions that have to be made. And so it's not going to get easier, basically.
No, I don't think it is. All right, if we have nothing else on this, let's jump, take a quick break, and we'll jump into our B block here, which is the future of product development in the age of AI, or Aquarius, or is that the fifth dimension? I don't remember. You're watching Techstrong, gang.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, folks, we're back in Talon's point. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about AI and product development and marketing and where all that data is going. And I know this is in Lisa's sweet spot, but there's a story on Digital CXO talking about this issue. And it feels like maybe we're getting a little more data driven in our product development, but I got to wonder, where does that spark of ingenuity start to show up if we're keep using the same old data. So Lisa, what's going on here? How do we strike a balance?
Great question, Mike. This is such an interesting topic to me because as long as I've been in marketing, which is almost 20 years now, which can't believe, product managers have, and I was a product marketing manager for many years, working very closely with PMs. They've been tasked at really guiding the strategic direction of a product. They have to balance what the customers want, what the business wants, what's technologically feasible. And historically, they've done that by customer advisory boards, customer feedback, which is still incredibly important, but also market research, competitive analysis. And now with a data science as a foundation, they're able to use machine learning, predictive analytics to make truly data-driven decisions and things like um, predicting future user behavior. How are users interacting with our products? How do we prioritize one feature over the other? And so the role of PMs is changing, I think, for the better. And there's a lot of alignment or integration, I'll say, with marketing, because what we expect is to have all of this telemetry on how customers are interacting with their products to be able to make informed decisions in a timely fashion, almost in real time, so that the vendor is competitive. There's a number of alignments, I'll say integration as well, just to be cheeky, with data science, PM, and marketing that I really thought was great in this article. And the first one is user segmentation. It's incredibly important to understand where users are based on their behavior, how are they interacting with product features. This helps PMs develop personas, and then marketing can take the development of personas and the buyer's journey per persona to the next level and facilitate that buyer's journey and understand what content do we use, what do they want to see at certain stages of that journey to get them qualified into a salesperson. Also, A/B testing is a great alignment where data science is great for PMs as well as marketing. It's been around for a long time. As I said, I've been in the industry for 20 years, and the A/B testing is nothing new. And it's not, but it's a staple of product management. It's a staple of product marketing. And it really can kind of take the user segmentation that we just talked about to the next level. Machine learning and algorithms can help not just determine which feature is performing better, as I mentioned, but also how are those different user segments that they've determined and that they've identified, how are they interacting with the technology? And the third one is churn prediction. It's definitely more cost effective to market to and retain customers than it is to attract new customers. Every organization has percentages of both, especially from a marketing standpoint. But it's really important to understand from a PM standpoint and a marketing standpoint, who's churning, who's likely to churn, why, what is it that we can do feature-wise so we'll start reducing and dialing down that churn. Maybe it's introducing new engagement models or customer support. So data science as a foundation for product management in alignment with marketing goes a long way to really helping companies become data-driven and delivering what customers want, which is that lifetime value.
Excellent. Excellent. You know, what about digital twinning, right? For product. It came to me while I was listening to you, Lisa. I've been doing a lot of interviews lately with some companies some big companies, I think Siemens, for instance, right, has created this whole digital twin sort of platform where you can take your physical product, a boat even, and you create a digital twin of it and see how it'll react in different sort of weather conditions or sea conditions, for instance. I wonder if we haven't thought about digital twinning products into some sort of, virtual environment and
That's a great idea.
to see what
I think for security, yeah, that would be amazing
Oh,
to
that
see
would
in
be great for
security.
security, right? Because you could set up your whole environment, drop this in there, and
Mhm.
and play it out.
I think we've seen people doing that, especially like on high-end products, whether it's, for example, an aircraft engine or something like that, where there's millions of dollars. But I'm not quite clear that digital twinning has gotten cheap enough for everybody to go use for
Mm,
product
Oh,
sure.
development.
I think it has. I think it may not be cheap enough for, a lower level software product, but I think the technology for digital twinning and creating that virtual environment to play in, sandbox, if you will, I think someone already took that name. Um, but I think it's cheaper than ever. It's cheaper than ever, and every day it's getting cheaper with AI and machine learning and stuff like this.
Well, not to make AI agents the solution to everything, but if you dig down into kind of what are AI agents and what are the different types and kinds, and actually have a brief coming out soon. I'll plug it when it comes out. But if you look at it, there are AI agents that are reactive to triggers and things happening in the environment, like an image or a light source changing. There's also goal oriented. There's utility oriented. They're learning agents, which would be something that might enhance or maybe even replace what a digital twin knows. And then there's hybrids of these, and of course, multi agents from the same or different providers. So I think, Alan, what intrigued me about your comment too is that AI agents could potentially be part of that digital twin, whether it's technically representing it that way or it's just representing it through the data that it gathers and the inferences that it makes. So, when instead of just presenting us with information for here's the flights and the hotel availability, book all that, but take into account my calendar, my workload, what's kind of pending to potential invites, the travel time, my preferences, personalize all of that for me, and then deal with all the changes that happen in my environment instead of me dealing with all that information and taking action on it.
I love it. I mean, I'll tell you something. I was planning a trip, and I went into one of the AIs. I use a lot of the different AIs that I'd like to see the differences. And I said, give me a 3-day itinerary to go, or 4-day itinerary to go here and there. And it laid out a beautiful itinerary, better than anything I would get from Fromm's or something like that. And I just because I'm crazy like this, I said, okay, go make my reservations at these restaurants and pull up the flights and, let's book them. And, the AI very politely told me, jack off. He said, we don't do that. We don't do that.
I don't have that feature on
That's
my
not
AI.
my job. That's not my job. But I thought to myself, wouldn't it be great if it was, And I mean, tell me, Mitch, you're the AI agent, man. Am I going to be able to do that soon? Because that would put the cherry on my sundae, right?
I think that's, to me, one of the potentials. The real value of AI agents is not presenting us with more information, which what AI did for you, right? It gave you a really good itinerary, which is that's very valuable. And to your point, the need is, well, I don't want to know, how do I execute
Right,
on
there were
that? I want
12
to go
things in
do
there.
all
Go do them.
Yeah, exactly. I want you to do those things for me. And that's going to take AI agents talking to others, both AI agents, but also traditional systems back to the
Back to the
APIs,
software
data
integration problem.
services, making the payment. Exactly. Back to the integration. So, when Satya Nadella said that SaaS is gone, it's all going to be agents. I think it's a hybrid world where we see agents talking to traditional services and systems, APIs, et cetera, to accomplish it. That's the world I want to live in, where you can say, make it so. It would be Captain Picard.
If you do that, you got to go like that, Mitch, when you say it.
Make it so.
And let me ask you something about all this. Do you think that the pace at which products are rolled out and updated is going to accelerate as a result of all of this? And we might have a new product launch every 3 months, or will it go the other way where we're just adding new features to everything constantly and there isn't such a thing as a product launch because, well, there was the first launch and now everything's just an update?
I definitely think the features. I think features are a lower lift. I think features have a quicker opportunity for revenue. They're, taking advantage of money you already have coming in. You add a little bit more to that income stream versus trying to go get a new one. And I think it's less jarring. I think whatever is the easiest way to take the money is the way that's going to happen. And
Yeah.
and the way that this works is if you slowly stack it up, right? Like we watch these services slowly add little features and then they hike up the price and it's $2, $3 at a time. And so I think that's probably what we're going to see.
I think
Especially
we're already
as,
seeing it.
yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to get more subtle and the increments will get smaller, but it's going to happen. The prices will go up.
I mean, look, not to segue into our next block and talk about phones, but for most of the world, even for most of us in the tech industry, our biggest the applications we interact with the most live on our phones. I don't know about you, but I think I have over 100 apps on my phone. I'm crazy.
Easily.
But I've got over
easily.
100 apps on my phone. Every single one of those apps is being updated, if not daily, at least weekly, I think. We don't pay attention. We've become numb, and I don't know if that's a good thing, but we've become numb to the constant, continuous update. And I couldn't tell you what version of this app that I'm running. Surprisingly, I can tell you what version of iOS, for instance, I'm running, or what version of Mac OS, but even Windows, right? I mean, it used to be a big deal when Windows would upgrade from, Windows 95 to 98 to ME or whatever, and we have Windows 10 and Windows 11, but think about all the incremental upgrades that take place in Windows or your Mac or your phone, whether it's Android or whatever. We don't even pay attention to them. We're desensitized to it.
Yeah.
Well, to Ann's point, that's what happened with Apple and intelligence, right? It
Yeah.
wasn't a big OS
Not
drop
at
and
all.
everything's in it, right? Incrementally, and that got added, and we're still seeing new features roll out in small releases.
Right. Not since the launch of OS 10 has Apple had something that dramatic and that different that caught everybody's hearts and minds.
Yeah, but you had to sign up for a beta to use it, right? I'm still on the beta cycles. And I still don't necessarily know how great this Apple Intelligence is, to tell you the truth, other than the little thing that makes cartoon pictures. And you get those pretty neon light around it. I'm not 100% sure I'm buying it. But we'll save that for the next block. We'll save it for the next block. Anything else on product development, though, in the AI world?
I think
One
that,
of the sorry, go ahead.
go
Lisa.
ahead, Mitch. Okay.
No, no, no.
I was going to say from a kind of customer perspective, this article had some great examples of Airbnb and Amazon. And I always kind of default to Amazon. I don't do a lot of Airbnb myself, but there's so much data that's collected. And we have this expectation in our consumer lives that bleeds in, and I talk about this all the time, to where business lags, where things like Amazon are going to use AI to make predictions based on past behaviors we've done in a non-creepy way. There's a line there. Maybe it's dotted, but we have that expectation that the experience will be seamless. They're going to serve me up relevant information so I can make a buying decision, because the better the customer experience, and PM and marketing have a lot to do with that, the more sales go up, the more revenue comes into a company. So I think the integration the data science piece foundationally is really critical for that customer experience, delivering the value that customers ultimately expect.
So let me give you an Amazon gone wrong real life story on that, Lisa. So I have the big 15-inch Alexa screen in our kitchen that I use as like a digital center for my home. And if you guys have all used Alexa, when you get a notification from Amazon, it blinks yellow, or you get a yellow light around it. I don't know how much you guys use it, but I get a notification. I said, "Hello, Alexa, what's my notification?" "Hello, Alan. Good afternoon, Alan. A product you're following has been reduced $3. I said, "What product, Alexa?" "Well, it's the dough wagger, cat bed, rabbit hutch, cat tree." They started giving me all these products. I don't have rabbits. I don't have cats. I don't know where the hell it got it from. So I said, "Alexa, I'm not interested in this. Please take it off my list." "Oh, would you like me to add this to your list?" I said, "No, take it off my list." So AI gone wrong. I bought a dog bed one time a year ago, and now it's trying to give me every animal hutch and bed that they've got over there.
I guess the lesson is don't doom scroll rabbits.
No, well, I'm trying to take it off. It won't let me take it off.
And it won't. Interesting. That is a good example of AI gone wrong. I don't have an Alexa because I have Siri, and that's enough. It's listening. I have a dog named Claire. When I call her Clary, Siri pops up. Probably will do it right now. But so I don't have the Alexa experience, and so I'm old fashioned, Alan, where I'm on the Amazon website or I'm on the app, and I have good experiences where it's surfing up relevant information. But you make a good point: is where is it getting that information that's surfing you up wrong, irrelevant content? That's a question mark.
But don't assume that it was you that did it. Anyone that shared a computer or, a phone that was
point.
near your phone and your GPSs were turned on, your phones are talking. So someone close to you geographically on their phone could have bought it. Someone could have used a shared computer. If you and your spouse share a login, don't assume that it was you that did it because your data is
point.
getting creeped
Well, I'm
from
going home
all
and
over.
asking Bonnie if she's been searching for rabbit hutches.
You
That's
might
all.
be getting a new rabbit.
Maybe
I
we're
just want
getting
to
a
thank
rabbit.
all,
Happy
I just wanna
birthday,
thank all
Ernie.
of you
Rabbit
for
don't
saying
die.
Alexa 20 times because I don't know what I'm going to show up on my Alexa now.
It is getting crazy. I'll tell you, we have this attic and there's a ladder that goes up in the attic, and I had it down the other day, and sure enough, an email pops up asking me, am I interested in these awesome new attic ladders? And I'm like, I didn't even talk about it. I didn't mention it, and some sort of video captured something somewhere, and it was just kind of weird.
Wow. Yep. Yep. That's
Um,
crazy.
It is.
Again, it didn't have to be you. It didn't have to be your phone. Your
Right.
spouse's phone, a friend's phone, someone in the vicinity, your neighbor that was your phone was near their phone. They're having a conversation whether you realize it or not.
Scary world. It's a scary
Wow.
world. All right, let's take a break here on Techstrong Gang because we're overtime on this block. We're going to stay on that phone theme coming back at you, though. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
All right, as we were talking about earlier, yeah, this whole Samsung versus Apple thing continues to play out. The latest is the fight over AI, and Samsung has a new phone out there talking about how it can access external LLMs and have Bixby on your phone. And whether these two things are actually talking to each other is a mystery to me. But Anne, what is your take on what's going on here with Samsung, Apple, AI? It seems like, it's a boxing match.
Oh, absolutely it is. I mean, these are two players competing on a level that most can't and don't. I should say that I am ex-Apple. This is the only big company I ever worked for. And Samsung has been my client for almost a decade and has been very good to me. So I have love for both companies. So I say this from a place of love. I do think Samsung's phones are absolutely more innovative. I will say that because I am an Android user through and through. I've used Android phones as the majority phone for a long time because of the amount of control and power it gets. These S25 series Galaxy phones have a boost of AI features that I think have been unseen as of yet because they have cross-app experiences and integration with Gemini, Google's AI, to perform tasks across multiple apps. So I think we're going to see sort of more active assistance coming from these phones, especially for things like calendar events, sort of more like an actual assistant, which we haven't really seen from these phones yet. They also have improvements to existing features like the gallery app, circle to search, sort of the things we've seen on Google Pixel phones and other things. It's catching it up, but it has the new Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 chipset. And so from a hardware perspective, is going to be tough to beat. I would say if you're looking at sort of the core features, when you're looking at an Apple phone, you're using ChatGPT as your third-party AI integrator, right? And now with Galaxy, you're looking at Google. So it's not really truly Samsung versus Apple as much as it is ChatGPT or Samsung, sorry, versus ChatGPT and Google. I mean, it's the alliances within these two that I think makes it really interesting. So I think making a choice as a consumer, If you value privacy, integration, and a subtle sort of AI experience where it's not so much in your face, Apple is your best choice. I think Galaxy makes sense if you want more features, crossing between apps, multiple devices, live translation, and you don't mind the AI feeling and presence and watching it and having it feel a part of your experience. I think Galaxy AI is definitely your choice.
Yeah, this is interesting. I remember when Samsung or Apple used to make an announcement, it always was hardware heavy. Now we're seeing, beginning last year with Samsung, the sign is the smartphone makers are leaning on AI to make their phones stand out. I think Galaxy AI last year was the big focus. And I think now, but instead of focusing on individual AI powered features like generative edits, Samsung's incorporating AI into its phones on a more fundamental level. And in a sense, as part of the settings. And it's interesting because, in a sense, this stands out. And when you compare it with Apple, Apple is kind of slowly rolling this out. And there is a genuine concern, not just on Wall Street, but I think within Apple, the stocks have been hammered lately among concerns about iPhone sales tapering off. And there's a lot of attention being set on what impact, if any, Apple Intelligence will have. I don't think it will immediately. I think it's going to happen probably later in the year as more of these features become available. But it is part of the story. And for years, and Ann knows this as well as anybody, Samsung was in a weird way chasing Apple or dueling for the top spot in smartphone sales. It rarely got the buzz that Apple did, even though its feature sets were better, probably. And now it's, in a sense, kind of leapfrogged Apple. And it will be interesting to see what Apple does when it rolls out the new AI features and what impact they might have at all.
What I Yes, you're absolutely right. I think Samsung has gotten less fanfare. I think they've gotten less media attention. Here they are quietly making these beautiful screens, beautiful products. I think they both make beautiful products, but I do think Samsung has been short shifted in the press. I do also think that, when it comes down to it, someone's getting the bill. Someone always gets the bill, right? So who's getting the bill for this new intelligence that we know they're spending billions building? I think Apple is going to do probably a freemium model. They're going to have paid tiers because that's what they do. I think we're going to see free access. I think for now, at least. And so that's going to be something consumers will notice. But again, how are they going to monetize all of this? I think right now we're in the wild, wild west, let's get them hooked sort of phase. But eventually, I think you're going to expect to see subscription costs for this. And it will be, something you're expected to pay for, not just the hardware of the phone or the service with your provider.
And
Lisa,
how do you
do
think
you
that will change? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
do you have a sense whether people actually switch phones when these announcements come, or are we all like Apple people and Samsung people and we're just along for the ride?
Most people are
At least-
zealots. I would say there is such a thing as digital tribalism. And I have been berated for being a primary Android user. I will tell you, I secretly also use my secret phone as an iPhone. And that's just so I can stay up on all features. And when startups come to me, a lot of the time they don't have an Android app yet. So I have to have both and I have to be fluent in both, but I prefer Android. And I get so much grief for that from Apple people because they're like, your text, you're green. You can't do this thing. And it's like, why do you care what color my text is? But it's a very real thing where the more you get locked into Apple, and the reason I use a Mac, I have an iPad. The reason that I don't use a primary Apple phone is that I can't give them everything, and I won't give them everything. I won't give one company everything because once you're in, you can't get out. Once all your
Yeah.
stuff's in iCloud, you can't get out. And I just can't let them have it.
Lisa, you want to add to that?
I was just going to ask kind of question, and you really answered it. Like from a cost perspective, as if the Apple model, like you talked about, is becomes subscription to use more AI features and it's baked into Samsung, how likely are, from a customer behavior perspective, is that likely to influence? I think you bring up a great point. We're so locked in. I am Apple everything, even Apple TV. I wouldn't switch. I know how to use this. I know how to operate it. And I think even though it's an arms race, right? Feature for not really feature for feature, but the Apple folks are going to remain the Apple folks. The Samsung folks are going to remain the Samsung folks. And I think we're going to continue to see that jockeying for market share globally, because I just think consumers are, once behavior is set, it's really hard to change it.
Absolutely. I think the only thing I see changing it is the cost of hardware, because iPhones have gotten exorbitant.
Yes.
And I think that is something that younger people are maybe less concerned about.
So, but
That
people don't
they
feel
can
the
switch
cost.
digital natives.
People don't feel the cost of the phones because it's wrapped into your carrier subscription often, right? If you upgrade, you sign on 2 years. They don't know the difference. But here's my take. I can't wait to see this year's WrestleMania and these two heavyweights go at it in a cage death match. Here's the facts. At the end of the day, in this corner, you've got Apple, OpenAI, and Microsoft. And in this corner, you've got Samsung and Google, right? And it's funny, it's the same fight over that we saw in the PC wars and the browser wars. And, is the Qualcomm Series 8 Snapdragon as good as what's the new iPhone 16? Is it the A20, the A18, whatever? It's optimized for AI, right? There's at every step of the way here, these two go at it. What's interesting is because it's Google, though, you do have an integrated suite of work products, right? Google, whatever they call it, Workspace, that is now integrating that AI that integrates right into the phone system. Where on the other side, you have OpenAI, which is not really part of Microsoft, but sort of part of Microsoft, not really part of Apple, but sort of part of Apple. Hey, if we had a real FTC that was looking at monopolistic practices, I think Google's in trouble, frankly. But that being said, I don't know if they're ever going to be able to charge this for these things, because I'm telling you, it's going to be table stakes. It's going to be table stakes.
Oh, they're going to charge. I guarantee you. They may hide it, but they will have to. Somebody's going to always get the bill for all of this R&D, all of the expense of maintaining this infrastructure that is needed.
Whoever's coming up with the $500 billion will pay this too.
We missed you on that segment, Alan.
Oh, well,
Really
let me,
missed
all
you.
right. I'm glad you said that, because let me bring it up. If you didn't catch it yesterday, I started a new LinkedIn Live little video series called Shimmy Says. And I talked about this on Shimmy Says.
thought.
So
Yep.
though it's not live, you can go get it on LinkedIn. It'll probably be on YouTube Shorts and TikTok, if we're still allowed to do TikTok. TikTok as well. It's Shimmy Says. And I spoke about this $500 billion. That's Stargate. I've got Stargate in my brain. Yeah, it was. I loved all of the Stargate iterations. But anyway, yes, someone's paying for it. So, look, those tech bros didn't invest all that money for nothing.
That's for sure.
Yep.
Good point.
Do we have anything else, Mr. Vizard?
No, well, I just wanted to show of hands. So who is Apple on this particular group here?
And I used to be an Apple hater,
I'm raising
but
my half
I'm all
hand
in.
because I'm raising a half hand because I do technically
Well,
have
but
an
it's
iPhone.
only your secret phone. I wonder what people do with a secret phone. You said that. I'm
all
thinking,
kinds of stuff.
I don't
All
know.
kinds
Look,
of
this is
stuff.
a family show. This is a family show. We may not want to share it.
No, I will say I have I handle sensitive information for my clients. So I'm not going to put anything Facebook on the same phone that
Really?
handles my work.
you
Yeah,
are-
absolutely.
Good for you. I didn't realize the level
That's
of
very good.
paranoia had reached that high, but that's pretty cool.
Maybe
You
Apple
say
would charge
paranoia,
you
I
Google
say
too.
caution.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that
I like
makes
that.
me the only Samsung person on this.
Well, no, and
I just recently got a Google. I've been Samsung up until this last phone. I tried the Google Pixel because I figured, my whole life's Google anyway. Why don't I just see whatever? I will never get another one.
I'm
going back-
like Lisa. I have Apple TV. I've got my watch, my phone, my Macs, my
The only
iPads.
The only thing
iPad,
I'm
yeah.
the only thing I'm
I'm
ever
the
really
old-
jealous of on the Apple side is that Siri is a much better experience than Bixby ever will be, and Bixby is just
Oh, that's
Yeah.
who Bixby is. Bixby is the Google Siri.
Going away.
Version
Bixby's
of-
going away though.
Bixby's
Samsung.
Being
going
replaced by
away.
Google. Yeah, in the new phone.
It's Galaxy AI, which is going to be based on Gemini.
well,
So
they
give it a
still
chance.
they still have both. They hire, and you're supposed to figure out which one to use. And Bixby's an idiot, so I don't know.
Yeah, but they say over time Google is going to replace what Bixby does. So eventually it's probably going to be gone.
John, you wanted to say something?
Oh no, I tried Google Pixel actually. The weird thing is I can't use a Macintosh or an iPad or desktop is completely PC. I just refuse to go back because it's so counterintuitive to me. I used to write for Apple Trade magazine, and so the phone is just hello. The phone is just and I'll always stick with it.
Go figure.
The
Anyway,
bias.
we will see how this plays out. At the
Thanks for
end-
joining our consumer focus group here on Techstrong Gang.
You know what? Maybe we could do this for product development. We could be a focus group.
We're available.
Right?
for
We
fees.
are the
We are
digital
available.
twins. Okay. Hey, this is a great Techstrong gang. We've got a full day of Friday Techstrong TV following it. Do check out my Shimmy Says show. I'm interested to hear what you say. And next Thursday at 2:30, you can join me live on LinkedIn if you want to participate in that. But until then, have a great weekend, everyone. Enjoy it. I hope it's warmer or safer wherever you are. And or colder, I guess, depending where you are. But we'll be back Monday with more Techstrong gang, more fun. Until then, this is Alan Schimmel for Techstrong. We're out.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel. We're back here at Techstrong TV. Our next guest is Scott Dietzen. Scott is the CEO of a company called Augment Code. We're going to find out all about Augment Code, but let's find out first all about Scott. Hey Scott, welcome to Techstrong TV. It's great to have you on here.
Alan, thank you for having me. So,
It's a pleasure.
prior
ahead.
to running Augment Code, I've actually had an interesting journey. I did a PhD in machine learning a very long time ago when the technology was about symbolic reasoning rather than neural nets. But I got inspired by Jeff Hinton, who was one of my early AI professors. Been following his career, and as large language models emerged, I saw this opportunity to maybe reduce some of the pain that I'd seen. Multi-decade career doing really hard system software at places like Pure Storage, WebLogic, BEA systems, and was always daunted by how hard it was to crack open a really complex large repo and make changes to it, and felt AI could help us do a lot better at maintaining these really large, hard software projects.
That's amazing. That's really cool, man. I know you're not supposed to ask age and all of that stuff, but give me an idea. When did you get your PhD in ML?
Early 90s.
Wow. Wow. So Gen AI, AGI, all these things are not even on the radar at that point, right?
It was very much about logic and symbolic reasoning. In fact, people like Jeff Hinton took grief from the symbolic reasoning powers that be, because they said, "Oh, if you ever get those little toy neural networks working, we'll go in and find the symbols for you." And so he had the wherewithal to stick to that research agenda for 30 years until the technology and the performance caught up with what you could accomplish. And so I appreciate that persistence.
I think we all do. We all do, right? In retrospect, it could wind up being kind of the project of the century, or at least the early part, first quarter of this century, right? Excellent stuff, Scott. So, I've interviewed so many founders and CEOs over the years, and the successful ones always have a passion for the mission, what they're doing. Now, obviously, sounds like AI and this kind of stuff has been a passion of yours for 35 plus years. So, but I mean, it's amazing. I'm married 35 years, so I can appreciate the, the distance there. Um, that's a long time to be passionate. What about Augment Code's mission kind of gets your juices flowing?
I'd love
Maybe
to.
we should define what is the mission. Maybe go there.
Well, let me start with the passion, and then I'll hit the mission. You know, I,
Okay.
I loved programming when I got to do it. And when I first started in the industry and experienced software engineering at scale, I was struck. I was working with people that were better coders than I was, but the job wasn't fun. It was really hard. And it was, as you get many engineers trying to work on a multi-decade or at least, a significant scale, tens of millions of lines of code, it becomes really unwieldy. It can be fragile, extremely complex to understand what's going on, require a tremendous amount of coordination to get those changes right. And so as large language models emerged, it was like, wow, is there a way to attack this complexity? And the products that were in the market in those days, like the early GitHub Copilot, for example, struck me as much more targeting simple programming than software engineering, where you're really trying to deal with a large, complicated piece of software. So that's what we wanted to go after. We wanted to bring the full power of understanding of your code base to bear with AI. When you get started with most of these coding AIs, they're like a new college grad, which I once was a long time ago, where you know a little bit about programming languages and algorithms, but you don't understand the software that you're trying to work on and the environment in which it runs. That's Augment's differentiation, is that we come in with comprehensive knowledge of your software without ever training on your code.
Love it. Again, this is a mission, a company that couldn't exist until it was the technology was there to support it, right? The horsepower and everything else. Tell us a little more about Augment Code. I mean, you're the CEO, but how big? And I'm not asking you to say anything not kind of public, but who's the customer base? Tell us a little bit more about the company.
Yeah, so we only launched the product, within the last six months or so. It's now available for anyone to use free of charge, and it really impresses people pretty quickly in terms of giving them knowledge of what's happening inside their software. So, for example, one of our customers, Lemonade, they've got north of 10 million lines in a mono repo. And they're constantly moving engineers around that project, bringing new engineers on board, and Augment helps them orient into this new code base for them, or new area of the code base, really quickly, so they can come up to speed without having to put a load on the senior employees. Another company, Codem, that uses us. They do migrations and upgrading of e-commerce apps, so they're constantly jumping into new code bases and needing to find their way around in order to make changes. They're getting an order 50% acceleration for their workflows because of all this knowledge Augment brings. So, even though we're new, we've got hundreds of companies now using the product, mostly in the tech industry, software and intensive companies. And once you try an AI that understands your software and its environment, you never want to go back.
So they say. That sounds great. What's the plan to commercialize here?
Well, I think the game is changing around AI for software. As I said, the earlier AIs are novice. Now everyone wants that contextual knowledge and we're in a unique position to be able to deliver it. I think the hope is that we can pay down a huge amount of software debt. You know, if you look at just the United States market alone, we lost $2.5 trillion last year due to software failures. I mean, there's not a piece of software I've ever encountered that doesn't have a long list of features, nice to have, as well as refactoring and tech debt that people would like to fix and change. Now, I see this opportunity with AIs that understand your software like Augment, that we can deliver the software of everyone's dreams. We can make it more reliable, easier to use, secure, more fault tolerant. I think all of these things can come out of these much more proficient AIs like the one that Augment is delivering.
You know, I'm trying to remind them. I was trying to think. There was a testing company. Gil Swed was the founder CEO, and I'm blanking on the name. But they used to test. They'd look at a website and tell you how a person would see it. You know, a person not seeing, a real person didn't see it, mind you, but they would tell you what a person would see. Right? It was like optical something testing. Kind of reminds me of that, right? Where without a real human being in there, the AI is telling you what the human experience would be, so to speak. And, you know, and that's an amazing thing if we could do that at scale, you know, when we're talking large scale. And that's one way, you know, that it's one way where we're seeing AIs kind of change the game.
Yeah, but
Right.
a great way to think about this is, you know, humans are really good at thinking over the long term about what they'd like to see in a piece of software, right? Do I want to change to a microservices architecture? Do I want to move this application to the public cloud? What, you know, is there a mobile interface that I want to develop for it? What we're less good at is all of the incremental steps that need to happen in order to accommodate those changes. You know, especially in a large repository, you know, even there's no simple change in a large repository, right? You want to add a field to a data structure. I mean, if that data structure is persisted, you've got to update the database schema. You've got to change any of the command line or other APIs that use it. So AIs can really help. Like if you open up Augment Code and you make that change, it will offer to pull that change through an entire large repository, potentially touching dozens of different files, and guiding you through that process. And if you get interrupted in the middle of it, you don't have to go back and struggle to try to remember where you were, because the AI will help you pick up right where you left off.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a wonderful thing. You know, we were talking on our Techstrong Gang show last week that, you know, they say there's about 27 million developers in the world today, software engineers. You want to say, no, there's 30 million. All right, I'll give you 30 million. You want to tell me there's 25 million? I'm not going to argue with you, but somewhere in that range. As a result of using AI, they say, look, by 2030, we may have 500 million people who are, I don't know if you really want to call them software engineers, but they're asking AI to develop code for them. So the amount of code that's out there, that's going to be out there, you know, you're talking about exponentially more code and apps and stuff floating out there that really, to the point where I don't think humans wrap their heads around it. It's like trying to say, oh, that's 30 million light years away, and this is 40 million light years away. What's 10 million light years to a human, right? Same thing with just the sheer amount of code that's going to be generated by these AIs and everything, that really only another AI is going to be able to sort of wrap their head around. Yeah. You know, speaking that way, kind of wrap their head around it and make, you know, heads and tails of it all.
Yeah, I would say two things here. One of the challenges with these novice AIs that I was mentioning earlier is because they don't understand your code base, they're really happy to add new code. Like if we were building something together and you had added something last week, If I start trying to add the same thing, most AIs will be like, oh yeah, sure, let's add, yet another class into the system. What Augment will try to do is say, hey, why don't you reuse the code that Alan wrote last week rather than try to add new code? Let's adapt and reuse rather than proliferate code inside a repository. And one of the most exciting things I've seen is when Augment wanted to delete code rather than add code into a repository, because that's how we can get to higher software quality. And so most repositories, I hope, can shrink as we make them better and more secure and remove dead code. But I think you are right that the barriers to delivering software are getting reduced, and the economic returns that can come from having all of the software that people want, software that can do any different task that we imagine. I think that can unleash a lot of human productivity and wealth, and make many more of us able to create the software of our dreams.
Agreed. Agreed. You wrote a blog article a little bit ago, Scott, about, this kind of the impact this is going to have. First of all, I assume people could get to that off of the Augment Code site, which, have we mentioned the site? Is it augmentcode.com, or what's the URL?
It is, in fact, augmentcode.com.
And so they can get the blog from there, I assume.
Yes, absolutely. It's on the
Okay.
top nav of the site.
Excellent. Tell us a little bit about maybe this blog post and some of the concepts there.
So we've hit some of them already, right? That we really wanted to tackle the discipline of software engineering rather than just toy programming. And that, real software, complicated software lives a long time, and it comes with documentation and testing. And, a lot of the development happens outside of integrated development environments. Engineers use tools like Slack often to communicate. At Augment, Augment can join a Slack conversation. So if you're having a debate about how a piece of code is supposed to work, you can invite Augment into the Slack conversation. It will render a verdict, and you can even assign a pull request right out of Slack to Augment and have work done. And so there's this opportunity to go beyond just the development environment and tackle kind of wherever software engineering lives. Another thing that people often find is, that the documentation is inconsistent with the software, or somebody is coding something outside of security policies inside of a code base. Augment can pick that up. Like, we can identify when documentation is not current, incorrect, when there's a security policy violation, and then lead engineers in the right direction toward delivering a better product, more reliable software.
Love it. Very cool stuff. Scott, we're about out of time. And these things go quick. I apologize. But first of all, congratulations. A lifelong programmer, right? Coder, doing the CEO thing, right? It's exciting. It's fun. And and it's also, the fact is, I tell this to people all the time, what an exciting time to be in the software engineering world right now, right? With all, and not just software, in tech in general, with what is the promise of changes to come, and new vistas to explore. Keep us posted, keep up the great work, and we're interested. It's going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out.
Absolutely. I think we are in an extraordinary time, Alan. I mean, we've gotten to see internet and mobile. I'm convinced AI is going to be bigger than the combination of them. There's so much potential to unleash human creativity that we are on the cusp of. So can't wait to keep you posted on all of that.
Of course, you saw this all coming when you were doing your PhD back in the early 90s.
Not even close, but I'm really glad to have gotten
exactly.
Glad to be part of
better
it.
to be lucky than smart, Scott, right?
No question.
All right, man. We'll see you soon. Thanks again for being here. Best of luck with Augment Code.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate you having us.
All righty. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong TV. Scott Dietzen, CEO of Augment Code here, and we'll be back with more. Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody, and you've joined us here on DevOps Dialogues, where we talk to tech leaders, practitioners, folks that are into the world of DevOps, software development, all aspects of that. So my name is Mitch Ashley. I'm VP and practice lead for the DevOps and app development practice at Futurum Group. And I am joined by a special guest today, Johnny Halife, who is CTO and also founder with Southworks. Welcome. Good to be talking with you. We've talked a few times, Johnny. It's nice to talk again.
Yeah, it's great to see you again, Mitch.
You as well. So tell us a little bit about, just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about Southworks and what kind of things that you all do.
Yeah, so my name is Johnny and I'm CTO with Southworks. We've been in business for 20 years. We are a software development firm. We work with companies all sizes, from startups to enterprise, working on this, fantastic world of DevOps and multi-cloud and everything that has to do with this new wave of infrastructure. And I'm excited to be here talking to you today.
Very good, very good. Having worked in DevOps a while myself too, and we do a lot of research around DevOps, we see a lot of data that shows that organizations have really done a lot of adoption. Matter of fact, they're kind of moving into more maturity levels of it. Not everyone, but it's been around for a while. Almost a decade. I'm curious your experience as you work with customers. I'm sure you work with folks who are maybe getting started, kind of have somewhat of a practice going. Maybe they've been doing it for a long, long time. What differences do you see DevOps making in how software projects are going, and where do you see those differences?
That's, it's a great question. And oftentimes when we meet companies that are not so into it, we see, I would say, resistance or a pushback because you are working for the software, not in the software. And, after 10 years working on this, I would say that it's that feeling of going slow to actually go fast. We see that the business value for these people has to do with less error, more control, more predictability when it comes to deploying very complex systems. And, you need to get into it, because I agree with our customers when they say you are working for the software, not in the software. But at the end of the day, we see a lot of value on that predictability, on that ability to know that things will follow a natural cadence, if you will, every time you are deploying. And we see that also as, the agility on the business. We see a lot of our customers when we meet them that they are we prepare our release trains and this takes 3 months, and we have our customers bugging us for X or Y feature, and we have no way of deploying that within the time frame. So, it's a maturity level for the company. It's a peace of mind for the SRE, DevOps, infra, IT. I've seen all the names. And it's also a very interesting upside for the business, because it's your ability to cater fast to your customer needs without having to say sure, that's planned for release XYZ, that it's coming 6 months down the line when we are done with our current release train. So, but it takes a lot of education and training, right? It takes a lot of you need to be doing this. And oftentimes it takes these trust me, it will get better. Trust me, it will pay down the line. But once you get into it, I think I would say the results speak for themselves, right? People are yeah, how are we just getting started with this? This has been around for 10 years. I even read the Phoenix project, but I never thought it applied to us.
Mm-hmm. And there can be a lot of drivers for why people might adopt DevOps. A lot of attention is paid to how many releases or deploys that you do per day, per week, whatever. And that can be a driver, but most organizations are not ready to do, 10 deploys or 50 deploys a day, right? Like maybe a Netflix or others would be. There can also be just being able to make improvements faster. So fix bugs faster, that you're in the development cycle, find out, get feedback quicker, earlier in the process, so you can make course correction changes. Maybe it's also a direction in where the project needs to go. Here's a new feature. We're going to prioritize this over other things. We can pivot without course correcting the whole project and incurring a big cost to do that. So I'm curious, what are the benefits that you see people wanting to get by implementing DevOps?
As you just said, and I think that's right on point. I don't think the driver being like the number of releases. That's just like a consequence. I think that the major driver has to do with like the complexity that it takes to deploy a modern system with microservices and a bunch of the cloud dependencies and stuff like that. So that predictability, and we see people like, we are going to deploy everything quiet and all that. That's like number one. And the other is that without a practice, like an active DevOps practice, all the, I would say, agile or lean startup speech goes to waste, because everybody, as it's just said, right? Like you are in for the feedback. You want to iterate quickly. You want to deliver value to our customers iteratively and incrementally. But if everything comes down to this big one milestone process that you will do every 3 months, and it has a lot of risk and it's super complex, and your teams try to stay away from it as much as they can because of all the stress that it takes, it kind of water down. Like, why are we working this way? Why are we doing like agile weekly sprints? Why are we doing an MVP and iterating over it? If by the time it hits the market, it will have been like 6 months. So I think it's a matter of alignment with the business priorities in terms of like, we want to work this way and be through and through with it, like trying to go to market as soon as possible. I think that removing the complexity and the stress of what it takes to, deploy a complex system will be number two, and all the rest about like, doing these contention nets to make sure that you're not introducing new bugs, or doing 10 deploys a day, and those sort of things are more like an accident or a consequence of doing that rather than the primary driver. It eventually happens, and it starts happening without you noticing it. But I think it's more on the value side. Like, hey, we have this bug for which we are getting 10, 15 tickets a day. We know it's a quick and easy fix. It will take us half an hour. It cannot take us 3 months to get into production. I think that's kind of the primary driver, and aligning the rest of the organization, because everybody's, chasing the agile wave or the lean startup way and building this iteratively and incrementally and all that. But if that doesn't go to market as soon as it should, then it doesn't make sense.
Talk a little bit about, DevOps is a contact sport, participation, doing it with others, but also learning from others that have done it before. I imagine you enter a lot of projects to build software for customers, deploy things in the cloud or whatever it might be. But you end up in part helping with the DevOps processes, streamlining workflows, maybe learning some techniques about how you do microservices as part of, a flywheel faster, right? To be able to deliver some of those software into test and into production, or iterate on improving quality, things like that. So you end up kind of a little bit of consulting as a DevOps consultant while you're there as a software leader. Is that true?
Yeah. And, one of the things that I like the most about getting into this world and that I enjoy the most is working with people that have their own ways, right? Like when you have a complex system, it's not DevOps is not a recipe. There is no like checklist of the things that you should do. There are a lot of best practices. There are a lot of things that we would recommend doing, but we found these amazing, techniques that our customers implement down the line, like versioning and how they deal with multiple API versions and how they enable rollback and how they, deal with dependencies and reduce the deployment surface to make sure that things are changing the least they need to change, and all that it's amazing. And it keeps amazing me, because it's like, sure, you can bring Argo and streamline the way you are working with containers, or you can do, intra-network builders, bringing the GitHub DevOps runners within your private network to reduce latency and stuff like that. But then there are the, I would say the tips and tricks or the practices that are acquired and they are part of the business, that like this, like versioning, or how you change traffic, or how you roll out and do A/B testing as you go to reduce the complexity of the deployment, while also, making sure that you're hedging for the risk of releasing a new version, or how they do API versioning, and those sort of things that are amazing. And I think that there is a baseline for everything. Like, hey, sure, you need like a build server, and you need to do, pick up Git flow in any flavor and those sort of things. But then there is the reality of the business. So I remember working with things that are real time. So how would you change traffic without affecting those that are connected to the system real time? And those sort of problems that are unique to each and every system, and learning about those while coming with our, proven practices for all these. It's, that thing of like, hey, I'm here to help you, but I'll enjoy the ride, learning about you and how are you dealing with these complex problems,
In today's world of software projects too, it's the success of those projects are even more important to the business because it isn't just back office, it's business strategies, really outcomes that they're looking to achieve, get into a market, be more competitive, deliver new capabilities. Given your experience of doing software for such a, large period of time, what are some of the things that you and kind of the Southworks team do to help increase the chances of success?
2 or 3 things that have been working for us. One is the crawl, walk, run sort of thing, like start small and then increase the complexity as you need to increase that complexity, not just for the sake of future-proofing solutions, because that ends up being like, a lot of work to introduce the smallest change and you actually don't need it, right? So that would be one. The other one is that pay the tax of having a sounding workflow for delivering and controlling your software lifecycle early on, because the hack and slash sort of days are gone. Like, you cannot live with that. And the later you introduce all these practices, the hardest it becomes, because you have a lot of moving pieces, dependencies become buried into, the complexity of the actual system, and nobody wants to pay the price. And it's like, yeah, we've been doing this for a long, long time. Why would we, care about it right now? But at some point it's, live or die sort of decision, because you need to keep up with the business. So we would rather pay that tax of, having the pipelines and understanding how we would go from development, staging, production, how we would test our changes, how we would know that things are working, and so on and so forth early on. Even if it's a small prototype, we want to set the pipelines and see them working, because if you introduce that later on, it becomes way harder. So I think that in between those two things, that sounds quite like an oxymoron, because I'm saying like, don't worry about what you don't need to worry, but be prepared for the future. Finding that, middle ground or that sweet spot is what we've seen as success, because crawl, walk, run, it's great. It always worked. It comes from, extreme programming, TDD, and all those practices before we even talk about DevOps and all that. But as I said, I agree with our customers when they said like, hey, you're working for the software and not in the software, and you need to work for it, like during a period of time. And that increases the level of confidence for your team, for your business, and even from the non-technical people, those that are, crafting features and talking to customers, and have that assurance that that thing that is, bothering you or been bothering you for, 2 weeks, we're going to fix it tomorrow. And you can say that, and you have the confidence, that you have the process, and you know how to get that into production. So I think that finding that sweet spot is kind of key to ensure success. Sometimes you need to pay the price, but the over engineering, it never pays off.
Mm-hmm. How about some common pitfalls? What do you see causes DevOps projects or implementations to stumble or maybe even fail?
It's a great question. I wouldn't call them failure, because I think everything is learning, as long as you can capitalize on it and you can course correct. It will be harder, or it will be more expensive, but everything is fixable. There is nothing I would say like, hey, let's drop and start over. But I see these eventually we will have a multi-region, multi-thing. So we need to figure out how we will align this. And every system is a living and breathing organism. So as with your body and everybody telling you to go do exercise, this is the same thing. When you build pieces on your infrastructure that you don't exercise on regular basis, they become like stale, and you lose confidence, and you ended up working to fix them when you never need them, and they become showstoppers. And that, I would say, this trust bubbles up to the management. Hey, you told me you would create this because everything will flow like a pipeline and everything will be fine, and we won't have to struggle with getting this into production and those sort of things. So I think that failure is when that working for the software becomes excessive and it's no longer delivering business value. And we need to be conscious all the time, and it's something that I talk with our teams and with our customers, that it's a price that you need to pay to have a healthy, well-tested infrastructure process, a DevOps process, if you will. But it needs to be active, and you need to be exercising it constantly. It's also iterative and incremental. It's something that you will, make more complex as you move forward. But everything that you put in, you will need to maintain. So when you end up maintaining things that you don't use, and these become blockers for delivering actual business value, that's where everything crumbles.
Well, let's look forward a little bit. We're at the beginning of 2025 when you and I are talking here. And there's a lot of anticipation about AI's use in software development, also using AI in our systems and our applications. Well, that's just one area. I'm curious about your thoughts on where we're headed with DevOps. What's next? What do you see as the next evolution or challenge of it?
I think that leveraging AI to do that continuous optimization by looking at logs, by looking at things that might fail and course correct quicker, it's an opportunity. I think that, as you just said at the beginning, we are almost 10 years in. So as it matures, I think we will start having a more comprehensive view of what it is, and it will become a crucial part of delivering business value. I think we will no longer have to explain why we are doing this, why you need to be doing this. There has been a lot of literature over the last 10 years explaining, continuous delivery, continuous integration, and stuff like that. I think this art or craft will become a real practice within companies, where you will have people looking at it as we look into security, as we look into developer productivity, as we look into patterns and practices for building complex systems. DevOps will be its own entity. It will no longer be this, dangling thing that sits in between developers and IT pros, old school, that just care about networks and hardware. It will become its own practice. I think it will eventually evolve to what you and I talk, I think 2 months ago, and I was saying about this platform engineering concept, where we as developers would start taking more and more responsibility over it. It won't be this sure, I build it, somebody else would take care of delivering it. I think it will be a more vertical approach, where developers must think about the full life cycle of whatever it is that they are building. So it will become integrated, it will become its own entity, and it will no longer be something that developers and the traditional IT people will fight over, who owns it, right? And we are the one who hold the keys to production, or we are the ones writing the software, I don't care about that. So I think it will converge. I like to call it platform engineering, and thinking about this holistic view that has to go down to the networking level, up from the app level. It's the evolution of full stack. And I think that's where we are heading. Every time that I go to events like the KubeCon, I see more developers into it. I see more people that actually write software thinking about like how to make their software resilient, how to take that software into production, how to make sure that it doesn't become a headache down the road, who's going to maintain it, how we are going to version it, and all those things that were like, sitting in between over the last 10 years, because traditionally you have like the IT people, the developers, and we would just, pass something along. I think we will converge into a more, mature practice that will develop its own standards and its own, patterns and practices. And it's here to stay. It won't change. It won't go back to what we knew as like, I'm a full stack developer. Same thing as we don't say like, hey, I'm a UI engineer or a backend person. That has changed. We talk about full stack. I think that we will start talking about platform engineering from an end-to-end perspective more and more and more as we go into the future. That might not be that far away.
Yeah, and I agree with you, especially about the platform engineering and DevOps kind of converging, whether it's one group or a combination of folks doing it. There's a lot of synergies. And of course, DevOps has helped kind of elevate a lot of things, helped, platform engineering, I think, come to of age, but also elevating testing, elevating operations, elevating security, software quality. And I think also as AI is introduced more and more into software, as well as the pipeline, that'll help us get there. It's a lot easier to improve something you do consistently as opposed to different every time, correct?
Exactly. And I think one of the things that DevOps have brought into the bigger picture is increasing the level of consciousness for those writing the software about how it will run, how it will go into production. Even as if you said, right, like it's a bigger squad in which you have like dedicated people working on that. But you need to be aware. You need to be aware. Those things of like, hey, how we would deploy these or how we will run or the networking or the ports or the things that as developers we thought we didn't have to care. It's gone. Like we have that, we are conscious about it right now. And that is an important piece. It will converge. And as you said, it might not be the same person, like there is no Swiss knife developer, I think, but you are aware. And that's like the most important thing, because that waterfall that we've been fighting for the last 15 years in terms of being agile and using Scrum and XP and TDD and all those sort of things need to transpire into infrastructure, into production, and making sure that we are a sounding team. So I think that's one of the benefits of DevOps that it has brought into the picture, increasing that level of consciousness about everything that's going on with the piece of software that you're writing. And I think that will become the gold standard. There is no way
Thinking
back.
about things more systemically, more holistically.
Yeah.
Well, Johnny, it's been fantastic talking with you again. I always enjoy our conversations. Hope we'll have you back again on DevOps Dialogue. If folks want to learn more about Southworks and how to engage with you and your team, visit the website. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Southworks.com?
Southworks.com. You can send us an email, an inquiry. We are always happy to chat with customers. And as I said, right, we learn a lot. There is like, we don't hold the truth. We are just there to accelerate people's goals and make sure that they are confident about what they are doing and they can scale and deliver value to their customers. That's what we do. And we'll be waiting at southworks.com.
Fantastic. Johnny Jalife, CTO with Southworks. Thank you to you and the Southworks team. And also thanks to everybody for watching and listening today on DevOps Dialogues. We'll see you on our next episode.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Scott Trevino, who's Vice President of Cybersecurity for TriMedics, and we're talking about what to expect in the coming year and beyond with the new administration as it applies to cybersecurity and healthcare, because there's lots of regulations, and well, the regulations are subject to change. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So What's your read on what's happening here? There's a lot of people focused on what's happening around regulations in general, and maybe not everybody's paying attention to what's going to happen in healthcare specifically. But cybersecurity folks, they kind of live and die by a lot of those regulations in that particular sector because we have things like HIPAA. So, what's going on?
Well, there's a lot going on. As you are probably well aware, there were a number of increasing cyber events last year in healthcare. Maybe towards the top of the list, we might all be familiar with Change Healthcare and the significant impact there. And as a result of that continuing tough environment for healthcare, we've seen a number of legislation introduced last year. Not the least of which was some Healthcare Infrastructure Security and Accountability Act. We saw Healthcare Cybersecurity Resiliency Act, and a few other key pieces of legislation that were proposed. And I think that's a natural outcropping of what's going on in the environment. We're seeing hospitals in the U.S. with almost 2,000 attacks per week coming after them. Healthcare information is highly lucrative. The sector as a whole for critical infrastructure is the highest, it's the highest targeted, the most lucrative data to obtain. And unfortunately, it's probably one of the more immature critical infrastructures, creating a pretty rich environment for the bad actors.
The Supreme Court has also taken aim at some of the regulatory authority of a lot of agencies, and I imagine that healthcare is going to be one of those affected eventually. So are those regulations going to get reviewed at some point if they were enacted by the agency versus something that was passed by Congress?
I think that's a great question. One example or case in point is Health and Human Services through the OCR released a proposal on updating the HIPAA security rule. And it's a significant change that has been proposed. It's in the 60-day, it was released January 6th, and there's a 60-day window for commenting. And I think the proposal's about 400 and almost 500 pages in total. So it's pretty meaty. Does some things to align the security rule with, modernized cybersecurity practices. It creates, things like the requirements for inventory, network mapping, better controls and requirements around patch management, encryption of PHI, and so forth. So that's a significant proposed change. I think, I'm not Nostradamus. I think with the new, White House, a new administration, some of the new appointees, I think it's going to take a little bit of time to see. I think, give it 90 days to 100 days to see some of the confirmations are done. What does it mean? You hear some things out of the new administration to eliminate 10 regulations for every one new one. So I think there's going to be a few things that shake out. So that's one of the big ones that came out in January 6th. So that's right at the change in the administration. It'll be interesting to see what the new group does. I would say that there's a need for better application of legislation and regulatory requirements for cybersecurity and healthcare in particular. Just given the nature of the things I mentioned before, I think there would be a benefit there. However, unfunded mandates legislatively would be bad. So requiring, the application of rules and essentially the introduction of significant cost to implement without funding or a way to recoup some of that's a challenge. So if I use the HIPAA new proposed rule example as way of example, that's estimated to cost, I think, upwards of $9 billion in the first year, and then about 4 or 5 every year after that. So there's a significant cost to be bared by those who have to apply and abide by HIPAA rules. And although you can avoid the pain of a breach potentially through implementation, that's a cost avoidance versus covering costs to implement. So you still have to outlay the investment there. So that's what I'll be looking at as I study that and comment on that further.
To your point, we're kind of torn a little bit about some of this because we kind of like the idea of more regulations if it improves security, but if they're not funded, it becomes a bigger problem because a lot of these healthcare organizations, some of them are huge, but by and large, most of them are kind of mid-sized to small and maybe marginally profitable. So can they afford these kind of fundings?
Yeah, that's another very important aspect to this. And if I, were to share a bit about rural healthcare, there's roughly 1,800 rural hospital systems. About 80% of those, or just about, are 25 beds hospital systems. So when you look at the challenges a rural system faces, there's a multiplicity of factors here: attracting the right talent, delivering good services and staffing, not to mention trying to get access to talent such as cybersecurity professionals. There's a huge shortage of cybersecurity talent within the US and globally, as well as biomeds to help maintain your equipment. And when you combine those two needs, you're really looking at a highly specialized individual. And, the rural health systems suffer with that, probably to a greater degree than some others. We're keeping an eye on this as well when a cyber event happens for some of those smaller systems. They may not have the resources to endure the financial impacts. And I see a real risk of, after a breach or some cyber event, that would contribute to closing down some of our more vulnerable systems.
To that end, though, it seems like in the last year especially, that cyber criminals are especially focused on healthcare organizations. And I don't know, is that because they're going to get rich off of it, or are they just that the value of that data is a lot higher and they can sell it somewhere?
Yeah, I think there's a couple factors here. One, the data is very valuable. That's one. Two, it's a target-rich environment. To my comment before, if you have a number of vulnerabilities, or you can socially manipulate folks to get access into a system and do it at fairly low cost with high reward, that makes it a very lucrative area to focus on versus some of the other sectors. Furthermore, I would say the U.S. is in particular, targeted more than any other country in the world from a healthcare standpoint. And there's, I think, some factors that play into that versus, if you have nationalized healthcare and you got the full weight and consistency of a, government-run health system going after some of the bad actors, or at least applying rules in a consistent way, I think that, our system here in the U.S., I think, lends itself to having more valuable data, a more complex environment, with some, a potential need for, more consistent regulations, as well as more consistent operation across different government agencies to help support.
Do you think maybe we need to take a giant step back as a government and look at healthcare and say, maybe we need a different approach here that is led by the government to secure all these hospitals versus just asking the hospitals to fit the bill? Because ultimately, isn't this a form of national security, or citizens are under attack?
Yeah, I think that's a conversation that's come up for some time and maybe gaining some interest, because you have nation state actors who are targeting our critical infrastructure, which happens to be a number of nonprofits and other systems versus, as I mentioned, fully nationalized healthcare. So of course you've got DHA and the VA and other government-run health systems, which would fall under the military or the Defense Department. I think that's a worthy consideration to say, what can we do? What should we do to protect our most critical, infrastructure, and healthcare being right at the top? That directly applies to access to care, treatment. Imagine if you're en route in an ambulance to a level 1 trauma unit, and that hospital system is shut down because they've been breached. The elevators are shut down, can't move equipment, can't move patients, and you have to be either rerouted to a less than level 1 trauma center, or maybe have to take another hour or 2-hour ride in an ambulance to get there.
A lot of the people who work in healthcare are not cybersecurity experts. They're most of the time they're just nurses, doctors, attendants who are just trying to do the right thing. Are we expecting too much of them in terms of their cybersecurity acumen to fight this fight? And maybe that's part of the issue here, is that it's not just about how many cybersecurity professionals we can find. It's also about people who work there. For all intents and purposes, they're defenseless.
Yeah, I think, we need to raise all boats, and it's not just the healthcare industry, whether you're, in banking or any other industry, including your personal life. you need to be aware. If you haven't had a phishing email come, you're probably a rare breed. If you haven't gotten a letter from one of your banking institutions or a phone company that's lost your records, I think we really do need to raise the level of education for all employees, in particular in healthcare. We already have training around HIPAA and patient information privacy. I think there is definitely a need based on some of the more recent events where you look at social engineering and manipulation to get access to passwords or a reset password to make a breach versus some other form of more complex and costly and difficult attack. I really do think there's a need for that, whether it's in healthcare or in other industries. And I think it's unfortunately a part of the new norm, if you will, in terms of understanding what it means to be more skeptical of emails and other forms of potential manipulation, or just be aware of, the sensitivity around the data and the other risks.
If I assume that everything that comes to me in the first place is false, I'm going to spend a lot of time verifying stuff. So that may add more time to their workflows and make things even more complicated.
I think that's very true. And there's a number of programs, we implement tools that actually generate those to help you practice and detect those and sort of train you on being skeptical to do that. And it's fairly quick. You basically hit an icon to say, hey, report this as phishing and so forth. And I think programs like that, education, that's, basically annualized training and other forms of cyber education go a long way.
Do you think with the rise of AI, it seems like it's getting easier to create these fraudulent attacks and phishing schemes and whatever else is going on? So might things get a little bit worse before they get better?
Absolutely. I think that's going to be something that's growing in prevalence that you see and read about more and more. Being able to fake somebody's voice and generate a phone call that sounds just like me. It's incredible about how well that can be done with so few words, if you will. And it's very difficult to detect those things. So there's a number of potential things that you can do to combat against that. Awareness is good. Having, your own, let's say, called private key. I know of an example where a business owner actually had somebody impersonate their voice while they were on a flight. They knew they were on a flight and emailed their admin to approve a PO. And they went so far as that CEO had a specific word the admin would ask when asked to do those approvals as a double check, and they knew what that was. So things are getting quite sophisticated. I know that's an anecdote, but it's happening more and more, and it's very real.
Gives new meaning to the phrase safe word, right?
That's right.
So when you look at all of this, what is your best advice to cybersecurity professionals in the healthcare field? Because it's easy to be overwhelmed. It's kind of maybe feels a lot like you're always fighting a losing battle, but what can you do to kind of preserve your sanity?
Yeah, I think that's great. And, I'm a big fan of the keep it simple methodology. And it sounds very simple, but I think with some basic approaches here, you can make headway in what can seem like an overwhelming environment. And it really comes down, I start in this order always, which is you got to invest in your people and help educate them. And we talked a little bit about that because it all comes down to your folks and the processes then that they implement. So I think, getting a few good cyber professionals or investing in some augmented support to put people with the expertise in place to look at and do a formal risk assessment and understand what your risk profile looks like and where to go first and where to start will help you look at what was previously maybe an overwhelming environment and not knowing where to start to come back with a risk treatment plan to say, okay, here's what my overall risk looks like. Here's a risk prioritized approach to go after it and then go implement that. And it really combines those people with those right processes and leveraging maybe some key technology that kind of round out your overall information security ecosystem for a hospital. I think one area of particular interest is the medical devices are unique compared to other OT/IT. So you can't just do remote software patches. In fact, many medical devices may never get a patch for a known vulnerability. So you have this environment where you have to mitigate, not remediate risk, because you don't have a remediation. And you have to take those folks will have the right expertise and the right processes to know how to go do that, which can help improve your overall risk posture.
All right, folks, you heard it here. Cybersecurity anywhere is a tough gig, but in healthcare especially, the folks that do that kind of work, they're unsung heroes. And so reach out to them at some point if you can and help whenever and however you can. Scott, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, and back to you guys in the studio.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
Hello, and welcome to the Techstrong AI podcast. I'm Amanda Rosani. I'm excited to be here today with a partner of Costanoa Ventures, Martina Lauchingo. How are you doing today?
Hi, Amanda. I'm doing great.
Wonderful. Well, we're here to talk a little bit about a survey that you put out. But first, tell me a little bit about Costanoa Ventures. What do y'all do?
So Costanoa Ventures is an early stage VC firm based in San Francisco, and we focus on B2B investments, largely in the infrastructure that help companies transform. So for example, if you are an insurance company and you want to get more intelligent in how you're doing claims, not just more efficient, we invest in companies that build that infrastructure. Or similarly on the IT side, if, all of a sudden your data has been hijacked and you're needing to respond in 30 minutes and you call IT department to try and get their help, how does a human insert themselves in that as opposed to just having the typical response and going through a chain, the typical chain of things you'd have to get to actually talk to a human? How do we build technology and infrastructure, AI-enabled infrastructure that helps us be way better at dealing and responding to circumstances like that?
All right, wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Well, so you recently did put out an AI survey. Can you share a little bit about the survey? Who were you surveying? And then a little bit about what information you were trying to gather from this survey.
Yeah, well, we are definitely in this whole new era of what we are calling AI native companies. So they've been built in this era of large language models, which means they're building their companies differently. The whole product backend is different. So we were trying to get a sense of, in this new era, how are companies different? And how do they build differently? How do they think differently? So an example of one of the things we were trying to understand is, well, how many models do they use? Because everyone thinks, oh, yeah, they use large language models. Well, one of the interesting findings was over half of the surveyed companies, and these are all early stage, so seed and Series A, so quite early in their lifespans. Over half of them were using 4 or more models, and so that was a really interesting result as an example.
Okay, so what should business leaders take from this survey? Were there any key details you want to share from the results? Any information that's interesting to business leaders?
Yeah, well, I think what is interesting is a business leader is going to have to make a decision. I mean, the entire application, what we call the application stack, is being rewritten by these AI native companies. And so business leaders will have to make decisions about companies they feel comfortable working with. So if you don't feel really savvy in this whole new world, what are the types of questions you should be asking yourselves about? Is this a company I should trust? Are these innovators that are really leaning in and are keeping up with how much has changed? So an example of how you might use some of the data we're finding is, how many models are they using in how they build their product? It doesn't mean that there's a set minimum, It just indicates the sophistication of the organization you might be doing business with. So an unsophisticated one will be using one model. A more sophisticated one will be using multiple because it makes them more computationally efficient, which means you get better costs or pricing. So these are things that would be invisible to you if you didn't know what was behind it, but they're the types of questions you can ask when you're trying to make a decision. Do these guys really have good technology?
Absolutely. And were there any key stats that you have access to that you could share from the report?
Yeah, well, one that I showed earlier, being that more than half of those that we surveyed were using 4 or more models. I think what was interesting there was how many, so about 40% were using both Claude and Llama. If that's, you don't know what that is, those are the new models from Meta that is open source, and Claude is developed by Anthropic. Very well funded, but the fact that they are used by so many, I think, is interesting and might be interesting to you as you're trying to get savvy on how do I assess the businesses I might be working with. And I'd say also where they are based has an impact on the talent pools they have access to. I think we were not surprised by the fact that over half of the companies surveyed chose the Bay Area as the place to be. But I think what was interesting there was that 33% that second-time founders were 33% more likely to be based in the area, citing talent and access to investors as the primary driver. And so again, there is this whole new wave of technology and how we are building that is sweeping the startup community, and for business leaders, understanding how do I assess these companies and know that they are really strong and what they claim to do. These would be the kinds of things that could be indicators for people that don't live in the world of technology.
Absolutely. So this, of course, we've seen this AI technology advance very rapidly only over about the last 2 years. What do you see for the future of this technology as quickly as it is advancing?
Well, I think that's the big thing is we have to make sure that the companies that we are working with or that we invest in know how to keep leveraging and take advantage of and keep up with how much things change. So it requires an amount of humility that I think many people aren't used to having in the technology world. Like, I know where the technology is going and I know what I'm going to do. We're surprised, all of us, by how quickly things continue to evolve. And so we just have to be ready to dive in and adapt. And I think that's one of the biggest shifts. I've been in technology for over 30 years. This is a place where nobody is an expert and we're all figuring it out together. And the people that are figuring out the fastest are those that just dive in, put their hands on the technology and try and figure it out because things are just changing so quickly.
From your experience, is there an issue with that kind of fear of AI from people? They're a little hesitant to dive in because they don't necessarily trust AI still?
I think it's merited. I think we get different results at different times, and that makes us decide how much we trust what we get in response. I will say that as one shift that I have noticed in the last year is the consistent quality of the answers I'm getting out of large language models and products that use them. That evolves very quickly. So what I would say is it is absolutely appropriate to be skeptical, but we can't stick our heads in the sand on this one. This is one where everyone's like, even if you tried it 6 months ago, try it again because the models have improved since then. And you might be surprised by what you see and learn and how quickly the models are getting better. So I would just encourage everyone, no matter how skeptical or concerned you are, to dive in and be unafraid of trying and having your own experiences so that you know how to judge this technology yourself.
Wonderful. Well, if there was one key takeaway you could give our audience today, what would that be?
I would say be curious. Be curious. Don't trust others to tell you what is the best, what is the most interesting. Try it for yourself and know that everybody's learning at the same time, which is a very unique moment in technology history for all of us.
All right, wonderful. Well, thanks for coming on and sharing your insights and some of the stats from your recent survey. And thank you again. I look forward to speaking with you in the future.
I look forward to it as well. Thank you so much.
All right. And also thank you, our audience, for tuning in every week. Stay tuned. There's more.
Welcome back to Techstrong Unplugged. My name is Kasia Judkin, and today we have Luca Molteni.
Nice to meet you.
Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Luca Molteni. I'm a software engineer. I'm 40 years old. I work for a company called Red Hat. It's the largest open source company in the world. And the opinions are my own, but I somehow represent the company. So,
And do you want to talk about your involvement with Java user groups?
yeah.
How things are there?
Yeah, I'm the administrator. I've been the administrator of the local. I live in Milan, Italy. So I live. I was the local administrator for the Java user group since something like 15 years, I think. So I saw the evolution. I joined when I was at 25 years old, and these days I'm 40 years old. So the things haven't changed that much in the last 15 years, but it has been interesting so far.
Do you want to talk about your opinion on like getting young people?
Yes. We have mostly two problems with the Java user group currently. The first one is to gather new people, especially fresh kids. I would like to see like young people join the Java user group, but unfortunately, it seems that Java is, as a programming language, is not considered cool anymore, perhaps by some, I don't know, from some developer. And but at the same time, the format is mostly, we have mostly 30 years old or 40 years old. And so I think it's kind of strange for a 20-year-old to join our group. And this is especially important because we want to hear the approaches of the new generation, when instead we're just hearing always the same people talking about perhaps always the same things. And and that's a shame. I personally am trying to push newer generation to Java in general, because you probably know that Java is the language in which Minecraft was originally developed. So I think that talking about Minecraft could be like a way to start talking about Java even with the younger generation. But I haven't tried yet. It's something that I will do in the next years.
Minecraft is how I got into Java.
Right.
So
Nice.
I think it's worth a shot.
It works then. And the problem with that I see with Minecraft, because I'm strongly opinionated, is that of course developers want to monetize over mods and new programs, and so they've tried to build all these kind of marketplaces. And since I see that the new generations are really attracted by new mods, new skin and stuff like that, they just want new things. They don't necessarily want to create new things. So I think the important stuff is to make them understand that by knowing Java, you can actually create your own, which is, I think, important thing, instead of consuming content that has been done by other people. And to do that, I would suggest personally, that's what I do to every parent or every young people using Java, to avoid using the Bedrock edition of Minecraft, in which you actually buy for mods, but instead rather using the original Java edition, in which you can install what you want. But sometimes this is hard.
No, I definitely agree with you. I actually learned some programming on the Java edition. I ran my own Minecraft server, and I got to learn some like command line.
The problem I see with Minecraft Java edition is not necessarily easy to install new mods. It's complicated. You have launchers, you have to check the versions, you have to check all kinds of details that probably somebody doesn't want. It's just too much convenient for somebody to launch the Bedrock edition, go inside the store, buy stuff with a parent's credit card, unfortunately, and like use them. So again, this is about gatekeeping, right? We want them to learn new things, to learn Java, to learn development, but at the same time, we don't want to keep them from using this. And of course, if to start using Minecraft, I have to know what Java is, what a Java virtual machine is, what a version is, what's the changelog, I mean, it's kind of complicated.
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges involved, like all the challenges of Java.
Exactly. Let's say that I would recommend this to a 7-year-old without having a parent that will help you in the first place. But the beauty of this is that once you get over the first part, you get everything for free. I mean, because this is the beauty of open source, right? We create all the mods, all the things are mostly open source. And so there are tons of things you can try like without paying anything. I think that's that's useful for both parents and kids.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Nice. Anyway, I diverged because I started talking about Minecraft, and I'm really opinionated about Minecraft. Anyway, we're talking about the Java user group. So the way I see it these days, Java user group will become like the evolution of what has been. I think that if we want to focus on the next generation and, for example, on Minecraft in general, we need to create a new user group. In fact, what I wanted to do in my local community, in my local town, I think it could be useful to create something like a Minecraft user group and like to start in teaching them programming like in disguise. Because, I don't know, we still have many biases and many stereotypes about programming in Italy, I guess. I'm just speaking for Northern Italy. And we still think it's something for geniuses or something for male geniuses for whatever reasons, or math geniuses. These are the stereotypes that my generations will bring forward, because we were grown up with this idea in movies of having the small boy that I don't know why it was always a boy and never a girl, by the way. I know why. It's just like the movies like that. They could solve problems because their parents couldn't even use a computer, right? So we are like children of those generation. And I think things have changed, but we still have those stereotypes.
Yeah, I can see how that's still a problem.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think in Italy we have even a bigger problem, because perhaps this is just my idea, my personal opinion. I'm not sure about this, but it seems like in the US you have a higher technical competencies, while in Italy computers are still considered something for the younger generation. So, for example, my parents, which are 70 years old, so like baby boomers, as you would say, like they don't use the computer at all. Like they don't even know how to use computer. They just use smartphone these days, but they use it like randomly. So they still call their sons and their daughter to make them help and use stuff. So we have even bigger stereotypes. I think the Java user group has other problems, such as, for example, we are lacking diversity. And diversity in Italy is perhaps not just a matter of nationality, because we consider mostly ourselves members of a European Union, and we don't really check whether somebody is from France or from Germany or from Spain, or if their parents are from Africa or if they are from China or whatever. We just don't care about this. We are lacking diversity. We are definitely lacking diversity in gender, because in the local Java user group we just have a few girls, a few women, and that is a problem. It's kind of a problem, because I can't believe that there are only that few developers. But I mean, it happens. I mean, it's kind of
Hopefully, when we get the younger generation to come to the Java user groups,
Yeah.
we'll also get the girls to come.
Yes, most definitely. When we join like conferences in universities, we see many girls like joining university, even in what we call STEM. I'm not sure whether it's a term that we use in Italy. It's science, technology.
It's pretty wide.
It's fine, okay. Because sometimes in Italy we use English terms like wrongly, so I'm not sure whether this is correct or not. Anyway, STEM in STEM faculties. And so I really hope for the next generation to be more diverse from that perspective.
And are you giving a talk here?
I have given a talk like yesterday, so this was recorded on Friday. And we spoke about Java performance, which is the niche of a niche. Apparently nobody really cares about it, since we didn't have many attendees. No, joking aside. This talk was perceived differently here from when we started doing this in Italy. I think in Italy there was a bit more interesting regarding performance. Here it wasn't that well received, but I guess different audience, different people.
It could just be like the conference format and just like the flow of people.
Sorry, can you repeat the
It
question?
could just be like the way the conference is organized and the flow of people, just other computing sessions.
Yeah, probably.
And your session is bad.
No, yeah, perhaps it's bad. I suffer from imposter syndrome, so perhaps I think that it's just bad. Anyway, what we're talking about, yeah, it's just probably it's kind of a hard topic. It's not general purpose. It's not something that you would care like when you're starting. It's not a beginner topic. So I guess that if you put such talk at the end of a day, like perhaps people are
Why do you
exhausted.
think this topic is important?
What do you feel? Okay, so thank you for the question. It's very interesting. Performance are important, specifically in the Java world, because we try to have we mostly have stereotypes about Java, and I don't understand why. I mean, knowing the story, I could understand why we have such stereotypes. But anyway, we think that Java is a slow language, but actually it's not. I mean, it was used to code Minecraft, for example. Perhaps this wasn't the best choice. That's why they decided to rewrite it in a different programming language. Anyway, Java moves something like 90% of the internet. These like random numbers, of course, they are not scientifically proven, but Netflix uses Java, Apple uses Java, Amazon uses Java. So Java is definitely moving the internet at the backend level. So it's really important to know about performance. I'm telling you a story. I heard another talk. I won't tell you the name of the talk. At the beginning of the conference, and he said, like, we all know that Java is slow, but this is actually not true. I mean, Java can be fast. Its main purpose is not fast because it was born as a language for portability, to have the same code, to be able to run the same code in between different Java virtual machines and in different architectures. But Java in 2024 is definitely fast. The problem is most developers don't really care about performance for various reasons, because we mostly care about speed of easiness of use of a programming language, speed of deployment, of development, I'm sorry.
I think we can solve performance with bigger and bigger graphics cards and processing units.
Yeah, there is also the problem. We try, in the last 20 years, we had like a gigantic explosion of CPU processing power. So most of our solution was like to put more CPUs and more computer, the same thing, like without, I'm sorry, I'm starting to feel, to sound like an old man, but when I was young, we used to code on a 486 or a Pentium. I mean, and the experience wasn't that much different from computers these days. Like, or perhaps my memories are wrong, and perhaps it was different, but I remember wrongly. Anyway, what I'm saying is that even if we have computers that are like far more powerful, like order of magnitude more powerful than we had like 20 years ago, most of our interactions are still measured in seconds. And if you think about it, it's just crazy. I mean, you're using an app and it will take something like 1 second to open an app. That's impossible. We have computers that are like considered the CPUs in the smartphones are considered supercomputers. Would be considered a supercomputer something like 15 years ago. And why we should still wait 1 second to open an application? Sometimes it happens. And because developers don't care about performance. I personally think that we don't have enough engineers to care about this kind of thing. Perhaps we're still lacking people, and perhaps in the future will be, I don't know, double, triple the amount of engineers that we have today. So we could have like people focusing especially on the performance and other people programming, but that's just my personal opinion.
I didn't think performance would be an issue. Like, I'm surprised that they're not really addressing it.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like a problem if you're waiting a second, or maybe even a few seconds, just for an app to open.
But think about it. How often does it happen for you to have an application that takes once?
Day?
Yeah, every day. If you think about it, it's crazy. And you're probably using an iPhone that runs on native code because Swift is compiled to native code. It's not using Java. But instead, if you were using an Android phone, it would be even worse because you're using Java, and we know Java is slow. Joking aside. The work that Google has done to make Java run fast on Android is remarkable. But still, we have a problem because engineers don't care about performance. And also there is this thing I have to talk about is about climate change in general, like sustainability. The less CPU we use, the less energy we are using. The less energy we're using, the less we are consuming the planet. Unfortunately, this is strange to speak about in 2024 because we're using LLMs, and LLMs are like burning forest each time you make a request with LLMs. But yes, that's another thing that we should address eventually.
I never thought about relating like the amount of power we use on our little devices to like climate change.
But it still is a problem. Like if you think about it, with a lithium battery, you can like last all the day. While if you're using a desktop computer, like it's using much more power.
Yeah, and sometimes the room heats up when you use a desktop computer.
Yeah.
And you need to turn it off just for that.
Yeah.
So I can see how that, like, it's draining so much power.
Yeah. Performance is really important. I really appreciate that there are companies such as Apple Computer, Apple in general, that is taking care of sustainability. If you know, the new CPUs from Apple draw far less power than the previous one. And I really hope that for the future, everybody will focus on this. But again, saying this in 2024, where everybody's talking about AI, and AI is order of magnitude consuming much more power than all the other stuff, it's kind of strange. But yeah,
Maybe we need sustainable AI.
exactly. But we're still at the very beginning of AI, and of AI as we spoke about in 2024. And by that we mean LLM and mostly generative AI. So yes, eventually we have to address this problem.
I think we've had a really good chat today.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you very much, Cassandra.
Hey, everybody. This is Mitch Ashley. Welcome to DevOps Dialogue. This is the podcast, the interview, where we talk to the most interesting people about topics that are really top of mind. So I'm very pleased to have Mehdi Dowdy, who is co-founder and CEO of Catchpoint, joining us. Good to be talking with you again.
Thank you, Mitch. Thank you. Happy New Year. It's good to see you as well. And thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Happy 2025. Good to see you, Mehdi and team. We're at some Tech Field Day events. I think you're going to be at some more. If you haven't tuned into that, be sure and do that. Some great content there. So it was interesting this morning. I was having this conversation about we're awash with data, but we're not awash with information. We have a lot, and that's probably true, I'm guessing, from application performance monitoring standpoint. I know there's a lot of lights, but who knows what that all means, right? When something's blinking or that's not blinking. Which give us first of all, tell us about you and Catchpoint, and then we'll dive into how do we deal with this in a little more holistically.
So, Mitch, thank you again. So my name is Mehdi, a co-founder, CEO of Catchpoint. Launched Catchpoint in 2008. So we've been at this in past 16 years almost. Worked at DoubleClick and Google, where I was in charge of actually monitoring. So I was on the buying, building, deploying, and using the tools to keep the ad technology system that DoubleClick was known for alive and performing super well. And I love monitoring, whether we call it observability, monitoring, etc. The reason why I love it is because when we do a good job, you deliver better services, you have better outcomes, and then the monitoring becomes an enabler for running a better business. And that's what I saw firsthand, and I was very proud of being part of that, of creating what often is called a culture of performance, which is like, hey, how can we be the best at doing what we do, the most reliable, the most available, the fastest, etc. And so, throughout that journey, of course, we learned a lot of stuff, which is one of the, for example, you mentioned it, is too much data, right? The data overload. Because as humans, we go through some kind of outage and we regret that we didn't have the right data. And so the immediate knee-jerk reaction is like, okay, we're going to log everything now, right? And we're going to log, but nobody thinks about how much it's going to cost. So then there is usually a CFO coming down on you and saying, okay, you just spent like X number of millions of dollars on storage just for the monitoring system. But the other thing is like, it's nobody knows how to interpret the data. The correlation, the causations, the connecting the dots becomes even more difficult to make, right? So the more data you have, the more cardinality you have, the more like, I don't know, what am I looking for? And so I was just on the phone with the customer earlier, and literally they were talking about how, we went from looking for a needle in a haystack to looking for a needle in haystacks. And so more data, more silos, more people, etc., can lead to problems. Now, the bad thing is like it takes longer to detect a problem, identify a problem, and resolve it. So I think we're into for some recalibration of that. What I talk to customers is They are trying to figure out a solution to end that, either through, of course, wouldn't be 2025 without throwing AI, but those are the kind of tools and capabilities that are hopefully going to allow us to go through a lot of data faster, and then maybe helping us connect the dots better.
I remember a day when we used to say the best way to provide the highest quality is don't change anything. Well, that's not even possible. It's all changing. It's like, it's no longer a solid, it's a fluid. It's under constant change.
And even
Different
if you don't
clouds.
want to change, Mitch,
Mhm.
the internet is changing. Your third-party providers are changing. AWS is making a change. GCP is making a change.
Your SaaS
And
applications, all of it.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so, how do you get ahead of that? How do you keep up with the constant changes? And oh, by the way, you can't go to the principal's office. I say, well, it's outside of my control. I'm not responsible for availability, performance, or reliability. You're still in the
Mhm.
hooks, right?
I can't point the finger and have that make any difference. Well, so
Correct.
where does APM kind of end its usefulness, its useful life? And then how do you fill in that gap? I mean, I remember APM was, oh, good, I can have some servers out on the internet, load my web page and measure how fast it loads it, right? We're in a much different world now, but
Yes.
I mean, APM even means a lot more than that.
Well, I think what I usually tell folks I talk to, especially on the customer side, is, terminology sometimes can be limiting in the way we look at things, right? So if you think of your house as your application, you have valuable stuff inside. You need to secure it. You need to make sure that you have your humidity monitors inside the house, etc. But then you also need an alarm system. You need to make sure that can hopefully nobody can get in. So thinking about that from that perspective allows you to say, okay, what tool do I need to get the job done? And the job is very simple. You need to be up. You need to be fast. You need to be available to all your customers, right? So if you have users that are worldwide, you need to make sure that whatever tool you have or whatever perspective you have is represents what the end user, where your end users are. And so I think it's first like walking backward. What are we trying to accomplish? What are the metrics we want to do? Maybe say we need to improve availability. Then what are the tools I need to do to do that? But APM is still the best, and tools like Dynatrace and New Relic, etc., do a fantastic job at making you understand what's going on in your house, right? Being able to understand when somebody does a search, what database did it call, how long it took to query, try to map the dependencies, etc. But the challenge becomes for some companies that rely on many other third-party services. Who's keeping an eye on the internet stack, right? That's the same way you have an application stack. What happens to Cloudflare? What happens if Cloudflare is having a problem? What happens if Akamai is having an issue? What happens if the network in India is congested? Again, being able to understand all of that. So it's not, I think it's understanding what each tool does, right? I don't use my toothbrush to comb my hair. Obviously, maybe I think it will work for me, but bad example, Mary, but you know what I mean, right? So it's like you use the right tool for the right job.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a great point. I like your analogy. It's sort of like driving down the interstate. I know my inside of my car is all looking good, but the road conditions can change drastically. Whether,
Correct.
So it's things outside of your control, really,
Correct.
essentially, is what a lot of that is. Well, so talk about Catchpoint and some of the lessons you learned, at DoubleClick and at Google that informed you of, okay, here's the next approach we have to take to answer the rest of the equation of what's going on in this picture.
Right. So very fortunate enough to have been part of the beginning of the internet kind of ish, right, from a commercial standpoint in 97. And then Google, of course, had a super focus on the end user, right? So when you think of Google, you think of that search page that needed to load in subsequent, and I think that set the stage for the whole concept of like everything needs to be available. And Yahoo too. I mean, Yahoo spent a lot of time inventing a lot of the tools and the concepts that exist today. So the end user is where it matters the most. It doesn't matter. And this is what happened to me at DoubleClick one day. I walked into our NOC, our Network Operations Center, and I saw my team chilling and, as if nothing was happening. And DoubleClick was broken. We were not serving ads, which are a livelihood. But all the systems were green. Like literally all of our internal monitoring was showing okay. No network issues, no database issues. The servers were fine. 15,000 servers were up and running fine, etc. But we were not delivering ads. And so that's where the monitoring is like, what are you monitoring? Are you monitoring for an outcome or are you monitoring for CPU and memory kind of stuff? And so that was my big aha moment when it came to you need to monitor what matters from where it matters, right? It's so critical, and it does what this is the philosophy that still drives us today. So, and that was one of the biggest lessons is again, monitor the end user and monitor where the end user is. And then also, if you're an e-commerce, then can I buy something and add it to my cart and check out, right? If I am a sneaker company, can I, if every time I go and pick size 10, you have an error, then you should do something about it. You should first know about it and then fix it. So I think driving the outcomes, monitoring should be here to help businesses run better, right? So align the monitoring strategies to the business outcomes. That's, I think, one of the biggest things I've learned. And when I see customers, some of the customers and partners that we do that for, it brings a lot of joy to me. Just like to see that causation between better monitoring, better observability to direct impact to business outcomes.
It reminds me of the metrics we always create for our technical organizations as mean time between failure or whatever it may be, or these kind of responsive things. They're all important.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean the customer had a great experience, though. Because failure, we live in a world, failure is going to happen. It isn't avoid failure at all costs. That's impossible. It just, so much is out of our control.
Right.
Talk about, so how do you do this from the end user's viewpoint? So you really are measuring as much as possible, or you're really assessing, I should say, the experience that you're delivering.
So with the concept of we want to monitor from as many places as possible to simulate where the end users are. So that was one of the design philosophies of Catchpoint. So we do what is in the industry called synthetic margin, which is a robotic process of monitoring. It's like digital mystery shoppers. Mystery shoppers have existed for 100 years. We're the digital version of it. So we have them located in the right cities, the right ISPs, the right carriers, the right telecom carriers, etc. And those things, those machines, they do very simple tasks. They basically simulate what an end user does. And they do it across all the different stacks of the internet. So your DNS, your network, your application, your APIs, your third-party services, etc. And our job is to really, from there, help customers triangulate the problem. So if you show up at your doctor, God forbid, tomorrow, you're going to show up with a symptom. My head hurts. Great. A good doctor is going to go through, okay, based on what I see, let me see if it's this, that, or whatnot. So monitoring and the data that we provide then needs to help the customer go through that triangulation as fast as possible so we can reduce the mean time to repair. And so what's also very important in our business is the data quality. So we focus on the data quality, the signal, what we call the signal to noise ratio is very, very important because you don't want false positive, right? I mean, no hospital can deal with like people showing up at the hospital every time they cough, right? That you have to have fever, this, that, whatnot. So it's very important for us to deliver the right the right metrics and the right quality to be able to drive better triangulation. So that's one thing we do. The other one is we enrich the data with other things. So for example, synthetic and RUM, so real user monitoring, fantastic, vast way of answering the question, so what, right? So the robots say there is a problem in Saudi Arabia. RUM should be able to say, oh yes, holy cow, it is a big problem. And oh, by the way, we dropped by 30% the traffic. So again, it's like, how do you put all these things together in one dashboard, etc., to answer the question, what's broken, where, and whose fault is it, right? Is it us? Is it the internet? Is it Is it a particular third party? And all of that needs to happen super, super fast. We do this SRE survey. We've been doing it for 7 years now. And I'm very proud of the work the team does. And this year, something that was very interesting that came up, and is performance is the new down. So we went from like availability, and we've seen that with some other customers where, on the maturity side, they cared mostly about, am I up? Are we up? Is the stuff up and running? To now performance, meaning that after 3 seconds, even though the site or the application is up, it's actually down because the customer is not willing to tolerate that. So the level of how much you're willing to tolerate slowness is going to be an indicator of availability. So again, how can we do all of this stuff as quickly as possible so customers can get to fix things as fast as possible themselves?
Well, if we can wrap with the AI question,
Yes,
it's on all of our minds. Everybody's talking about agentic AI. It seems like we're not very far away from synthetic users that are AI agents, and a world of I'm actually out there doing multiple things because I've got agents.
Correct.
Where my business does. Is there anything that customers or organizations can do to kind of prepare for that unknown of what that future may look like? I mean, I would imagine the more you understand an instrument and understand the experience that you're delivering today, as you add a new factor into it, now you could assess how to manage it better or understand it better versus, I don't know what I'm doing now. That just makes it worse.
Right. So I think it's an excellent question. So let's answer it 2 ways. So the first one is, what are we doing to prepare for a world where now there's going to be a combination of humans using the internet and then synthetic agents, right? That are going to be also doing stuff. Like there was reading an article where Microsoft is allowing you to create a robot to literally answer emails on Outlook without you doing anything. So I think that doesn't change the way we look at things, which is like availability, reachability, performance, reliability are pillars that exist in an AI or non-AI world, right? I would even argue that in an AI world, the tolerance for speed, reliability, etc., are going to go down. When we need better, we need faster, etc. So I think that is a fundamental thing. The other part of your question, the way I look at it is, when I talk to our customers and the SREs, the DevOps, etc., we're all trying to do our job better, faster, and be more productive and more efficient. Ultimately, that's what the promise and the revolution of AI is. And so what we are seeing is we're seeing customers that have a more methodological approach to AI. It's like, okay, pick 3 problems that we want to solve rather than like peanut butter kind of thing. Like, let's put AI everywhere. So it's like, okay, what are the areas where we're having a hard time finding talent? We don't have enough manpower, and let that drive, for example, either automation or whatnot. But on the monitoring side, etc., there is definitely some incredible efforts that are being led to connect the dots faster, better, right? Being able to pull all the data in solutions, like we're seeing a lot of that in Databricks, where customers are pushing all kind of data into Databricks, and then being able to connect the various dots at scale over there. And people are seeing some really good benefits so far. Databricks, Snowflake, etc. I think that's one area where we're going to see a lot of stuff. Now, the benefit of that, which is we're going to have less issues where people missed an alert, because I see that a lot with our customers. Oh, we got too many alerts, or somebody took a lunch break and we missed something. That stuff is going to go away. Or it's going to supplement or augment, however you want to look at it. But I think that's one of the benefits. I think that AI is going to drive better availability and reliability to a lot of companies.
Very exciting. It's interesting time. You live in interesting times. This is one of the funnest times in my career. Funnest is a word. Manny, tell folks where they can find out more about CatchPoint and learn more about what you all do and get engaged with you.
Sure. So first, catchpoint.com, obviously. We're on LinkedIn, Twitter, X, sorry. Our blog is fantastic. Highly encourage you to search that and read some of the content we produce, whether it's the SRE study, that, again, 7th year in a row, super impressive, and or the reliability and resiliency report we publish. We also own webpagetest.org. I'm sure some of your listeners know about WPT. So that's another free tool that we have for the community to test your performance. So again, slow is the new down. So start testing.
Very good. There you go. You heard it from the expert. Well, thank you, Mehdi. It's great to chat with you again.
Thank
and
you,
we
Mitch.
appreciate everybody tuning in to this episode of DevOps Dialogue, and look for Mehdi on another Futurum event or a Techstrong TV. He's around. We like having him on. So,
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Happy New Year, everyone, again.